stir things up for people, I will give a trigger warning before I introduce our lived experience speaker, the lovely Lisa Saunders, who we are absolutely blessed with having as a staff member here at the Y. Many of you might know her. But there will be some pretty heavy content discussed. If there is anything that you need to do, or remove yourself, or have a bit of space, please just do what you need to. Again, staff around the room, please let us know if you need anything. Welcome to Lisa Saunders.
Thank you. First, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we meet on today, in the Yuin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging for all the knowledge, wisdom and ways that everyone has passed down and continues to pass down about family, community and country. I acknowledge that domestic violence was never part of your culture, never part of Aboriginal culture, and I hope to keep walking alongside you all to learn, share, support and advocate for real change in this space. So thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Lisa. Some of you will know me as a specialist domestic and family violence caseworker with the Domestic Violence Intervention Service at YWCA. But I'm not talking to you today as a caseworker. Today I'm speaking to you as a victim survivor of domestic violence and coercive control after experiencing not one but two relationships of abuse. I am the author of Why I Stayed, a true story of a domestic violence relationship, in which I tell my story about why I stayed for so many years and why many of us don't just leave. I do speak in gendered terms of female victim survivor and male perpetrator because that's my experience. I do acknowledge it may not be yours. So just as a bit of a context, I met my ex-husband when I was 15 and he was 16. We were together for nearly 14 years. We started our family young and have 5 children together. I did escape that relationship and 2.5 years later met an amazing man who didn't turn out so amazing after a little while. I stayed with him for about 2 years and escaped that one. So I will be talking about real life examples of coercive control of domestic violence. There may be something that triggers you along the way. That is okay, it is a normal human response. If you do become triggered, I want to teach you that your breath is the easiest, fastest, cheapest resource and tool that you have. And if you just find a spot in front of you, if you feel any emotion rising, take some slow, deep breaths and just allow your vision to turn outwards to your peripheral. It will come and reset your nervous system. Feel free to leave the room, check your phone, zone out, go to the toilet. It is about whatever you need. Please look after you. You have permission, no questions asked. So what is coercive control? Coercive control is a pattern of abusive behaviours, physical or non-physical, that a person uses towards a current or former partner with the intention to coerce or control them. It involves tactics to isolate, monitor, scare, degrade, intimidate, restrict, or unreasonably control their day-to-day activities. Why do we need a coercive control offence? Because it's not currently an offence to control your partner. Domestic violence has long been associated with assault, intimidation, physical violence, which are criminal offences, but controlling your partner or your ex-partner for your benefit to the detriment of theirs is not. The coercive control offence acknowledges that domestic violence doesn't need to ever be physical for it to be harmful. At least I don't hit you. He used to taunt me, like he was doing me some sort of a favour. I used to be grateful that he didn't hit me, until one day he did. Because coercive control is how it starts. It can and does escalate into murder. The New South Wales Domestic Violence, sorry, I'm just going to take a break. The New South Wales Domestic Violence Death Review Team reviewed intimate partner homicides between 2010 and 2018 and found that 97% of those victims had been subjected to controlling and coercive behaviours before their partner had murdered them. So what does it look like in real life? As I talk about my own experiences, they are intertwined between both relationships. Sometimes I'll know the difference, doesn't matter though. How does it start? It can be, when I look back across both relationships, I can see how it escalated over time. But neither of them started out like that. Neither of them told me what I could wear or who I could hang out with within the first few weeks. Neither of them made threats within the first few months. There were lots of good times. It didn't happen every day. More so in the beginning were the good times, but over time, the anger, the outbursts, and the abuse got more frequent, more intense, more harmful, and more dangerous. It can be really difficult to identify coercive control in the beginning because it does look like care and concern, particularly with my second relationship. He'd check in about where I was, when I'd be home, who I was with, because I worry about you, which was so sweet, especially when you've never experienced that love and care before. He called me multiple times a day because I just love hearing your voice. And then, which is amazing if it continues to be about care, love and concern, but in my relationship it went from, are you okay? I've sent you 3 messages and I haven't heard back, I've been really worried, to 5 messages, 9 missed calls, and a voicemail that screamed, I've been trying to get a hold of you for 2 hours. What are you doing? What is the point of having a phone if you don't answer me? I constantly checked my phone, hoping I hadn't missed a call because it was really stressful, having to justify that I wasn't cheating or what I was doing when I didn't get back to him quick enough. I don't know if I like your friend. She's a bit rude, don't you think? You're just too good for her. And I kept hanging out with them because I liked them. Eventually, that turned into, just stop hanging out with your boyfriends. And I did because the carry-on that came after seeing them was just so exhausting, it became easier not to go. So maybe he didn't want me to have friends because he wanted me to be available to him to meet his needs. Maybe he didn't want people telling me what he was really like or convincing me that he was no good. I also heard, skip the gym, Savo. I just want to spend so much time with you, which I felt flattered. And I did skip the gym more than a couple of times. And eventually he'd use it against me and say, you've gotten so fat, look at how much weight you've put on. Well, there was a reason I was going to the gym. But as I stepped back from friends, family, the gym, I slowly became more and more isolated, lonely, sad, and I was less likely to stand up for myself and question him. Coercive control looks like repeatedly calling and messaging to check up on you. It's checking kilometres on the car or bank statements and receipts to monitor your day. It's taking the car keys or hiding car seats to stop you from going out. Controlling medication, food portions, access to healthcare, education, support services to maintain control. Making you feel uncomfortable about practicing culture, religion or spiritual practices. Putting cameras inside and outside the home to monitor. And making it difficult to connect with people, to isolate. Then he started saying nasty things to me as a joke. He put me down, he convinced me that people were talking about me behind my back and hated me. If I questioned him, he'd say I was being too sensitive, or that I couldn't take a joke, or I was just being dramatic. If I questioned him further, he called me dumb. What is wrong with you? It wasn't like that at all. He'd swear at me to insult me, call me horrible names, but at least he doesn't hit me. I'd soothe myself. He'd wake me up to argue, turn the lights on and off while I was in bed, and generally just use sleep deprivation to keep me tired, exhausted, and irrational. If I cried, he'd taunt me and remind me how crazy I was. If I got angry, it was used against me. In my second relationship, one time he just picked at me and picked at me and picked at me until I lashed out. And then he stepped back, whoa, 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 you sound like a bush pig. Do you have any idea how much of a bogan you sound like right now? And I believed him that I was the problem. The yelling and swearing and name calling just escalated over time until I just backed down because his temper was scary. And I started to wonder if he might actually lash out. And then it became easier not to question and argue back at all. Eventually, my self-esteem and self-worth was almost non-existent, and I was agreeing with him that I was the one who needed help. Because when I was an emotional mess, I was less confident, less assertive, more willing to keep the peace, more controllable. Another facet of coercive control is the financial dependence and control. It keeps victims stuck, either by stopping them from working or keeping a job, controlling access to money or assets, applying for loans or credit without knowledge or consent, and after the relationship it can continue by using child support payments or attaching financial support and assistance to their own terms and conditions. I was actually lucky to keep my first real job. As with a young family, I started working in a local school that my children attended. I'd have to call in sick when he refused to babysit our children. He'd just get up in the morning one day, decide that he was not watching them today, and he'd leave, and I would have to call in sick. I'd also get calls at work. I don't want to be here anymore. You've got 10 minutes to get home or I'll leave them by themselves. And I couldn't afford not to believe that he was bluffing. And so I'd make an excuse and I'd rush home. And then he'd leave, gone, doing what he pleased. After a little while, when I kept working, he focused in on one of the 3 male teachers at the school I worked with. I bet you're screwing him in your lunch break. Is that why you were late home from work yesterday? He didn't want me working because he didn't want to watch our children. He didn't want me meeting new people, having money, or probably realizing that there was more to life than what I was living with him. In my second relationship, he used my name for loans and phone plans, and then when he didn't make repayments, ruined my credit, and I'm actually still repaying a debt from 2016. That was in my name. The first time that I was frightened enough by my ex-husband's anger to call the police, we'd been together about 4 years, it was 2002. We had finished grocery shopping, we were driving home, and an argument started. He decided he didn't want to be in the car with me anymore, and he demanded that I stop the car so he could walk home. And I refused, because I knew that was not going to be the end of it. I kept driving and he again demanded that I stop the car, and I stopped the car. He got out and he walked home, and he refused to get in the car. So I drove home knowing that something was going to happen. I'd already decided that I'd probably need the police this time. When the police arrived, it was in the time when they asked me about an AVO, I declined, and police told me that as mandatory reporters, they would need to make a report to then docs, which was his way to control me from then, because every time we argued, he would say, oh, you can't call the police. They'll tell docs and they'll take your kids. And it took me another 7 years before I called the police again, because I was so scared they would take my kids. When I started telling him I couldn't live like this anymore, he threatened suicide and tell me it would be my fault if my kids didn't have a dad, that he doesn't keep me right. As he kept escalating, it became a nightmare to be in the car with him. Once, I disagreed with him in the car, and he pulled the handbrake up on me, and I never disagreed with him again. Maybe I should hit you, he'd yell. In my second relationship, he would drive dangerously and erratically, cross to the wrong side of the road, hurt my dog just to show me what he was capable of, and remind me of all the dodgy people he had associations with, just to keep me in line. My ex-husband would get angry and damage things that meant something to me, ruin special occasions or anything that made me happy, threaten to slash my tires to stop me from leaving. Sometimes he'd punch a hole in the wall and say, I wish I could do that to your face. And he looked so furious that I knew it would happen eventually. And it did. Both relationships escalated to physical violence before I managed to escape for good and begin rebuilding my life. But it did start with coercive control. It's a myth that coercive control and domestic violence ends as soon as you end a relationship. My ex-husband would ride back and forth past my house just to spook me, despite a no contact, no approach AVO. He called the kids and grilled them about me and what I was doing and who I was with. He contacted me through other people, made sure I knew I was being watched, and he refused to sign our children's passport applications so I could take them overseas. As our trip was approaching, in desperation, I asked our children to call him and ask him why he wouldn't sign them. All he said was, "Is Mum there?" And when I indicated I was, he said, "Do you want to know why I won't sign their passport applications? Because if they don't get to go, you don't get to go." And I wondered how far he would actually go to spite me, to hurt me, or to break me. It's now been 12 years since I escaped my first relationship and 7 years since I escaped the second, and I have come so far. Both times I did it with the help of police, solicitors, caseworkers, counsellors, family, friends, co-workers, community services. There was so much help and support that I used. Everyone contributed. And so I want to thank you all for the work that you do in whatever way, shape or form that comes in. There are so many clients whose stories you will never know the ending of, but please know that you do contribute in some way to everybody that crosses your path, and you do make a difference. I am proof that there is life after domestic violence.